This is the Dexter Report. In-depth discussions and real conversations with true leaders making a mark in their community. Here's your host, Joe Dexter.
What's going on? Joe Dexter, the Dexter Report, our inaugural episode right here on Dexter Media Solutions. Glad to have you along. A great guest coming up in just a bit. We'll talk with Steven Pulliam, the Dan Riverkeeper, about environmental protections, renewable energy, and community leadership in these unprecedented times. And that's just simply what it is. I know sometimes we joke about this unprecedented times moniker that we use, but we haven't seen anything like this. It's just the truth, and we have to learn how to adjust to it and how we can best serve our communities by adjusting to it. See, it's all how you look at it, and you can hear many people across the internet say this, but it's so true. How you look and how you're going to adjust to providing information to those that depend on you, that is something that can be benefited from this virus, from this pandemic. And I know it sounds crazy. It's hard to continuously communicate in these times when we're so used to being interpersonal. We're so used to being there. We're so used to being right next to our coworkers. It is very hard. But with the technology and tools that we have in front of us, the things that we can do with our family, with our friends, and most importantly, in this situation, our community, is key. It's paramount. And I think if we take advantage of it right now, it's going to pay dividends in the long future. And we're going to talk about that through the Dexter Report, through many episodes upcoming. We're going to talk to community leaders who share their true stories, in-depth conversations that will help you. That's what I'm aiming to do with the Dexter Report, and I hope you'll join me for my journey on this podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Dexter Media Solutions. You can find us on Twitter, twitter.com/Joe Dexter Media. Let me help you tell your story. Like Steven Pulliam's, a great story of a community leader here right in Rockingham County and across the Dan River Watershed. What Steven is doing environmentally is key, but what people don't know about the Dan Riverkeeper, you can find out more about what Steven does at danriverkeeper.org, is his involvement in the individual parts of community that are so imperative. If I call Steven right now, if I pick up the phone right now and tell him that somebody needs some help, he will be there as fast as he can. And that's what defines a true community leader. I'm so glad to talk to Steven Pulliam, the Dan Riverkeeper, about renewable energy, about sustainable energy, about community, and so much more. Here's Steven. We now welcome in the Dan Riverkeeper with Good Stewards of Rockingham County. Steven Pulliam joins us on the inaugural episode of the Dexter Report, Real Conversations with True Community Leaders. Steven, glad to have you on. Man, it's a crazy, I'd say, time of year, but let's just say it's a crazy year, whether you're a community leader, just a community member, or whether you're trying to make things happen in the nonprofit realm. It's just been crazy to adjust to. And Thanksgiving's no different, is it?
It hasn't been. It's been a year of going outside of not just your box, but your boundaries, and trying to expand and help and be more than what you have been in the past. It's definitely been tough to navigate, but we're here. We're doing what we can together, and anything that really strengthens the bonds of community and compassion and kind of relinquishes those gaps that we've had in our society. I think, we should be really grateful for what that's, for what this year has brought to us in that facet, but it is different. It's interesting to say the very least.
Before we introduce you a little bit more, you bring up a great point. I think sometimes we forget how good we do have it, even in these circumstances. I mean, we have it pretty good, right? I mean,
we do. Life is so short. And, every day we have the ability to stand on our 2 feet or tell someone we care about them or feel that care from other people, even if we don't know them. That's a day worth living. And we've had so many of those this year, and so many smiling faces amongst the pain that I can't say that I would change anything if I could and start the year over. I think that we've, as a society and as a community and as human beings, we've done a great job with these terrible lemons that we were handed.
He's Steven Pulliam with Good Stewards of Rockingham County, the Dan Riverkeeper. Let's talk about what you do, Dan Riverkeeper, protecting the waters. Let's just start there. What is your goal and objective as Dan Riverkeeper and with Good Stewards?
It sounds simpler than what it actually is. We have a firm belief that any environmental aspect, whether it be the land, the air, or the water, that all of us as people, all of the wildlife, all of our ecosystems that depend on it shouldn't have to worry about having access to water that's unclean or unhealthy. You shouldn't have to worry about your health, amongst all the things, especially in 2020. We want to protect it. We want to restore it. We want to have something for our family's future, for their family's future. And it's, never too late to start. We've got a lot on our shoulders and a lot looking forward, but working together and doing the best we can with our hearts and minds open and willing to negotiate and talk, I think we have a good chance of succeeding down the road.
I think in everyday life, sometimes we forget about the importance of the watershed or the water in our community, and not just from the drinking perspective or from the everyday world perspective, but just how it overall impacts our ecosystem if we don't protect these systems.
That's right. And one thing we've always said is, we all live downstream. It doesn't matter if you live on the water or if you live far away from the water. If you never go to it, you're going to have water in your house from those rivers. You're going to know people, or perhaps yourself, go to enjoy it through recreation and fishing or paddling or swimming. And, in a pandemic year, we've come to see how real the need is to have these outdoor spaces, to have, all the aspects of nature that we need to survive and to thrive and to clear our minds. I mean, it's a spiritual thing to be able to walk into the woods or go into the water and release, to take that breath that you've been holding back for so long. And at that point in time, you really don't need to worry about what's in the water. You should just be able to be present and aware and bring out that inner consciousness to let you see life for what it is. It's pretty amazing.
And even in the grand scheme, this is small, but even when you're in those situations and you're in those beautiful places in nature, seeing a bottle, seeing dirty water, just those things take away from that experience, let alone the major macro where this is going to affect your life every day. Not only your life, but, and we've talked about this before, generations after you are going to be impacted if you don't stand up to some of these situations that we're seeing across the world, also in our own community. It affects everybody in every situation. I kind of compare it, this is going to be silly in a way, but to voting. Everybody thinks their vote doesn't matter, but even in your local communities, your voice being heard on situations and things like this are important because it will affect where you live for years and years and years.
I agree. I don't think that's silly at all. When you cast a vote or make an important decision, you're leaving a legacy for at least, that 4 years or the time that follows. And, when you dispose of something improperly or throw refuse out, it's a legacy longer than you're going to live. I mean, it's the glass, even styrofoam, plastics. It's going to be there for a long time. And beyond what you can see with your own eyes, these microscopic details of the water can show that there's traces of plastics and forever chemicals that are named that for a very specific reason, because they're very hard, if not impossible, to get out of the water. So, starting where we are, it might not be the best place and it might not be where we want to be, but every day is a step forward and a new opportunity to kind of bring to light the issues that we've had, the things that we did or didn't learn, and bring everybody on the same page so that we have a more positive future.
He's Steven Pulliam, the Dan Riverkeeper, joining us here on the Dexter Report, real conversations with true community leaders. Let's talk about some of those issues in our water systems here in our area. Where are we impacted? What are some of the things we need to be watching out for? Because I think we sometimes look at our area, which we're in the Rockingham County region in the Piedmont region of North Carolina, when you look at Stokes County, Rockingham County, some of the rural areas by us, there are some beautiful, beautiful systems, not just water, that we kind of take for granted, and we don't look at the issues that are in front of us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, from Hanging Rock to Mayo Park to Ferrystone, I've met people from not just the region of the United States, but all over the world. When I was working for a good friend at the Dan River Adventure Company, we were taking folks down the river from Saudi Arabia, from Russia, from China. You know, it's very interesting to see. And, you know, people know about the Dan River, not always in a positive light. Like a lot of folks always ask about coal ash. And, you know, it did bring us out into the public faces in the media. And of course that was a negative thing, but in a way it brought some awareness to what a resource we have and why it was such a big deal that this coal ash was in the river. And, you know, why it's so important for groups like the Dan River Basin Association, for the Piedmont Land Conservancy to, you know, to spend so much time and effort and money and donations to protect these resources. And those are the giant shoulders that Good Stewards really stands on. We've been around for 6 or 7 years, but, you know, really didn't pick up speed until maybe the past 4 or 5. But again, you know, groups like DARPA and the PLC have really already made a huge legacy here. And it truly makes it easier for us to educate and report on how the water quality is and how it could be improved because of those groups, because they've brought so much awareness and so much access to these resources that, you know, otherwise might not be here. And I can say with great certainty that a lot of them wouldn't be if it wasn't for specifically DARPA. So, you know, we're kind of collaborating with everyone we can and just trying to make this a big movement to save the Dan, to save the Smith, the Hyco, the Mayo. You know, keep it clean for us and for our kids, for those that live downstream from us. And you know, if we're in the news from now on, we hope it's going to be because we have some of the most awesome places you can see, not just in this part of the country, but in the world. I mean, if anyone's ever been down the Dan River from Moortock Park or from Plencham Road to Moortock, then you know, it's breathtaking. It's incredible. And there's so much cultural history and, you know, from the early Native Americans, the indigenous people, the Saura that settled here, and many others from upper and lower Sauratown to back to Eden, where the bateaus from enslaved people were captained. It's big history. You know, it's the people are attached. It's bred into our hearts, our blood, and our minds. So, you know, I think going forward and the society evolves into hopefully a more sustainably based mindset that, you know, if things aren't perfect, then at least we kept them from getting any worse. And then maybe the people in the future that has a better outlook, a better perspective, and more influence can really, you know, do some permanent, long-lasting ventures to protect us from now on.
What are some of the direct issues that residents in our area are facing in regards to some of these challenges? I know Blues Lake has been talked about recently. The MVP Southgate issue has been one for many years now that Good Stewards and the Dan Riverkeeper have worked on to just basically inform people of what these are, what is going on.
Yeah, with Blues Lake, it's you know, been a long time concern, especially with the folks that live in that area, and more specifically Walnut Tree community, about groundwater contamination from coal ash storage. And, you know, there's been an ongoing issue for years from bromide leaking, well, actually not leaking, but being discharged from the coal ash reservoir at the Duke Energy Station. It causes a lot of issues with water treatment processes at municipalities. When that bromide mixes with chlorine, it can cause trihalomethane, which is a carcinogenic gas. So the town of Madison, the town of Eden have both put in place some mitigation efforts and machinery to reduce that risk. But nonetheless, there is a risk. It's still there. And so that's something we have been asked about a lot over the past many years. And, you know, there's been a lot of relaxation of the effluent limitation guidelines at the federal level, and what that actually would allow Duke Energy to do at Blues Creek and all over the country is to increase instead of decrease these the effluent emissions. So instead of decreasing bromide, for example, they could increase, and it would be totally legal, though these companies have equipment on site that could actually reduce it. So it's really backtracking, and that's a huge concern, and that's why we with Southern Environmental Law Center filed suit against the EPA on behalf of our residents alive and those that aren't with us, that have long thought that their health ailments were related to groundwater contamination, and my perspective, they really haven't been given the time of day to express their concerns and have anyone listen that could truly make a change. And some people like Danielle Bailey that are no longer with us, an otherwise healthy person that develops brain tumors and fights so courageously and uses their voice as a sharp weapon against the issues that impact her community. But she passed away this past year, so I think it's in her best interest, and I couldn't speak for her. God knows nobody could speak for her. She's a powerful woman, but in her memory and in the memory and in hopes that we can make a positive change for all those folks that are worried. And that's a big part of why we joined this lawsuit and why we were so committed as this small group in rural North Carolina to take on the EPA with much larger groups at our side. We feel it's the right thing to do, and it needs to be done. So that's a lot of the focus now. We do have a lot of concern about E. coli that's in a lot of the swimming areas here. There's what we're doing now is doing very thorough E. coli tests on 8 different sites in about a 72-mile section of the Dan River. So what we're doing is building a database of those levels. We're researching some of the geography around the river to see what is an acceptable nutrient offload into the river. E. coli can come from deer, it can come from animals, it can come from septic tanks, it can come from leaking wastewater treatment plants. So it's something that does naturally occur, but it gets to a certain level, then it's of concern. It can make people sick, not so much the wildlife, but again, it's all in that full circle of having a healthy river for not just the fish and the animals that rely on it, but for the people that, rely on it for sustenance or peace of mind or, just that bit of relaxation and clearing they can do for their mind throughout the day.
Let's backtrack a little bit and talk about Blues Lake and why this is important. The Southern Environmental Law Center states, according to the EPA, at least 30% of all toxic water pollution from all industries in America comes from coal-fired plants. So let's explain Blues Lake a little bit. For those that might not understand that area, it's a lake pretty much built by Duke Energy, correct?
That's right.
And so when this lake was built, it's not just you would think in some of these situations, like if the coal plant built it, it would be specifically for what they do. It wouldn't be a tourist attraction. It wouldn't be somewhere where people literally live on and where people fish. So this is why it's important, not just from the other perspectives of it affects all water in the area because they're all connected, but it does impact a local habitat area for people that are going out there. I mean, I don't know about you, Steven. I've been to Blues Lake. I've been not in Blues Lake, but I've fished at Blues Lake. I've been on a deck enjoying the beautiful sunset at Blues Lake. So beyond the water impact, if you take away some of these restrictions and you rewrite some of these rules, even though it is created by Duke Energy, it does not give them a right to literally dump whatever they want in there. And that's why it's important to fight back.
Exactly. And really it's a lawsuit, win, lose, or draw. It's kind of a temporary solution. We really have to focus on these long-term things. Everybody needs power. We've come accustomed to it. And I say need very loosely. We don't need it truly, but given today's circumstances and our society and our comfortableness with how we live, yes, it's going to be a necessity.
The sustainable energy discussion is a good one that we should talk about, and we'll bring up MVP Southgate coming up in just a bit. The whole debate about we can't afford to do sustainable energy right now. I just don't understand. Can you explain it to me? Why can't we do this? I mean, there are opportunities to transform an industry, and why aren't people more interested and corporations more interested in making this transition to solar, making this transition to other energies that help the environment?
I would, just throw out stubbornness more than likely. And, a dollar means a lot more to people in industry than it does to the people that are, living real life here in rural America, like you and I. There's no reason not to. And it's in the aspect of affordability. We can't afford not to transition away from these fuels that are increasing our carbon footprint and leading to an imminent disaster that's worldwide of all humanity. So, there's a very delicate balance on this entire earth. The earth is, not ours. It's a living, breathing being. It'll do what it has to stabilize, to regenerate. And, you don't poke a sleeping bear. we don't want to know what will happen if we continue on the same path. And it's been proven so many times that renewable energy is obviously the way to go. It can not only reduce our impact to the earth in a negative way, but it can rejuvenate communities that have kind of been abandoned by manufacturing and textiles that are not so distant of a memory here in Rockingham County and those around us. We're left with all this space, with all these sites that are dirty, where the ground's contaminated, and what can we really do there? And what the same answer really applies to all the mountains that have the tops blown off to harvest coal. You can't do anything. It's in some places radioactive, so people are putting solar farms there. When family farms are no longer a viable option, like tobacco's moved out, so there's this big choice that the family and those folks that inherit that land come to, and we can divide this up. It could be more suburbs or single family housing. That's not a great option right now, especially in our location. Why don't we keep the land in our family name, this sacred land, and they can make money from solar farms being there. And the cool thing about solar farms is, in 30, 40 years, when the contract is up or when the efficiency of the panels is, not where it can be or should be anymore, then they can just pick it up and move along. And there's so much resistance that we've kind of pushed back on, and not just Rockingham County, but Stokes and Caswell also. The ignorance is bliss sometimes, but other times it costs you and it costs the people you represent dearly. So I truly don't. I know the arguments that have been used against sustainable energy, specifically solar, but they're not based in any kind of reality or fact that I can wrap my mind around. We've been to meetings, at commissioners' meetings, regarding put moratoriums against solar farms, and farmers come to speak against it that have 200 or 300 acres of land that they pour Roundup on, and said they don't want the chemicals that come with solar panels. So I'm kind of like, what? What? I don't understand. It's really great for people that want to keep their farm tax credits to have a solar farm, because they can in turn use animals to landscape. Solar panels aren't what they were a year ago or 10 years ago. They're so efficient now that when sunlight passes through these panels, reflects off a native habitat of grass or flowers underneath it, it bounces back against the rear of the solar panel and charges a second time. I mean, they're very efficient, and the technology is there to improve on them for a great. We're around 30% efficiency with solar panels, and there's 70% there that we have yet to discover or really wrap our minds around. But the human race is pretty incredible when it comes to a challenge. They meet it. We exceed expectations. And if the technology wasn't even here 100 years ago, look how far we've come with so many other things that are possibly in the wrong direction, but nonetheless we're learning, we're building on our accomplishments in the past ones. So let's do this. Let's focus our energy and our time and our resources to do something that's positive for everyone. Money can still be made, but sometimes you need to spend $1 to make $1, and that's exactly where we're standing at.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's this preconceived notion that those of us that support renewable energy and cleaner energy think that Rome should be built in a day. that's not the argument that's being made. The argument is, let's start building Rome. let's do some things that are sustainable. Let's accept the sustainable energy so that we can move forward. Now, I'm not going to say that I don't want Rome to be built, but what I think some of the holding back of others that are to support it is that they think we want to destroy what's already there. No, we want to make what's there better.
Exactly. And, we have the opportunity to do it in our own pace so that we don't make mistakes. The typical Roman things, hindsight's 2020. Their aquifers to supply water into the Roman people were sometimes lined with lead. So they were poisoning and killing a lot of folks and never knowing it. The same where people thought tomatoes were poisons for years because they were served on lead platters. So, let's take our time. Let's do it right. But you have kids, I have kids. It's today, the leadership is kind of like me telling my kids to put on their shoes to get ready to go. And you don't expect them to do it right away, but you at least want to see them, put a sock on or lay on the floor and try to put a shoe on and struggle with it until they call for help. But, in comparing our children to elected leaders and leadership, you don't expect it to be done overnight, but if you don't apply this pressure for them to do it, they're never going to do it on their own. And that's really what we need and want is accountable leadership that's going to do something, not for a specific political agenda. It doesn't matter. Everyone needs clean land, air, and water. If not, we're all going to die. And that's the hard reality we're going to face if we don't do something better than what we've done in the past.
And it extends past water to some of these other energy sources too. If we don't look forward, we're going to move backward continuously. That's where I have an issue with it. It's not like I love solar panels. I want to put one on my house right now. It's the fact that if we don't look forward, we're only going to move backward.
Right. And that's precisely right. And the things that, like air quality standards get improved. So facilities, when they have smokestacks that have emissions released, they'll put water or chemical in these towers that's called scrubbers. So they kind of remove all these chemicals out of the exhaust. So the air being emitted from these towers or exhaust plumes are cleaner. That's true. But the scrubber chemicals are then dumped into the earth. So, you really didn't do anything. It's just, okay, I appeased one aspect of this trifecta for perfection and environmental stance, but I'm putting it into another aspect of that same environment. And, that the outlook on paper might be better for one environmental aspect, but, you really have to think of all these in a whole and as a whole. So, it can't be done to where it's going to be a sustainable process. And I mean, it's common sense to a lot of people. It's hard to wrap your mind around, and I'm not against those people. I understand the unknown can be frightening, but at the same time, there's lots of facts. We're in a day and age where you have a highly advanced supercomputer you carry around in your pocket. There's so much information from government resources, from nonprofit resources, from businesses. There's so much information, and it can only be ignored for so long. It just really takes 1, 2, 10 people at a time to turn their eyes to the fact that, hey, this is what we need to do for a better future for everybody. If you want to be in an office and live in a city, great. If you want to be a hunter-gatherer that lives in the backcountry of some rural area like we do, then it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what your goals are, your religion, your socioeconomic status, your race. We all are in this together, and we have to supply the knowledge to each other so we can go hand in hand in the future for something better. And I think that's really the only legacy that any of us hope to be able to leave is, we did something to improve upon or take away some negative. And just, I don't want my kids to grow up in the same world that I did. But you don't have to worry about that. It's in the past. So, we focus on the future and just, you can't guide everybody in the right direction, but you can put the knowledge there and hope that somewhere down the road they see and they understand, and in turn change someone else's mind as well.
He's Steven Pulliam, the Dan Riverkeeper. You can learn more about what the Dan Riverkeeper and Good Stewards of Rockingham County are doing at danriverkeeper.org. You can look at the projects they're working on and some of the issues that they are standing up against. Steven, let's talk about one of those issues that's been prevalent in our region, MVP Southgate. Some recent news out on that. But first of all, could you just give us an overall nutshell of what MVP Southgate is and some of the things going on with it?
Yeah, the MVP, aka the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the original line, the main line as it's called, goes through Virginia and West Virginia. It's 303 miles. It's a 42-inch diameter pipe that will be carrying frac gas from the Northeast down to interconnections with other pipelines. The MVP Southgate, which is a specific concern to our group and many other organizations, would be a branch off of that main line. It would start in Chatham, Virginia, in Pennsylvania County, run through Rockingham County into Alamance, and terminate around Burlington. It'd be a smaller pipe, but cross hundreds of water bodies. Our Dan River, when it comes to having the eyes like we do, and you want to protect things or at least keep them from getting any worse, any project or any idea that doesn't improve upon the current state of our environment is a bad idea, in my opinion. And that's one thing we've been working with so many elected officials, with other organizations, volunteers, community members, landowners that were directly impacted by the track of this projected pipeline, to say no, we don't want it. Beyond the environmental aspects of it, if you have land that's been in your family since the 1700s, it's kind of hard reality to wake up one day and have a letter in your mailbox saying we're going to take some of that land, pay you what we want for it, and if you don't, we're going to take it. If you don't agree to it, we're going to take it anyways through eminent domain. That's not okay. It's not okay by any standpoint that I've tried to see it from. And it's one thing when you have people that are on TV or in any kind of elected position saying, this is good for our economy, this is good for our people, this is going to bring jobs, when there's so many falsities of that you can't even, you get tired from combating all the falsehoods that surround these projects. And when it comes from respected individuals that have a public platform, it makes it even harder for you to do your job, in preventing it altogether, hopefully. But it's been an uphill battle, and it will probably continue to be for some time. We don't expect it to go away, even though they're in, countless violations, endless stop work orders, lawsuits. Their projected budget has just exponentially exploded over the past few years. So the hope at this point is that they'll consider it no longer viable for their budget and terminate the process altogether. Nonetheless, that doesn't help a lot of the people whose land's been devastated up to our north in Virginia and West Virginia. They're not going to pull the pipe out if it's already there. So, there's just and another aspect to it. This multifaceted issue is just the way our neighbors, our friends, our community family has been treated by these people. And there's really, in mine and their standpoint, there's no one listening that could do something, some direct action in a legislative aspect, or it's kind of like we're throwing you a terrible bone and saying that's tough, that's your dinner, and people are bitter about it, people are upset, and I think that's a pretty understandable standpoint when someone's coming into your property and saying we're going to come onto your property whenever we want, and when we take this land, we're going to do what we want to do with it. And it doesn't matter if you were going to build a house here for your children, or if you were going to plant a new crop here next year, or try to certify organic for your seed or your crop. It's devastating to their dreams and to their livelihood. And there's so many reasons to be against not just MVP, but all these other projects when you look at it from someone inside the community, but on a bigger scale, it's just not needed. There's no proven need for this gas, this extra gas, and it's baffling to see it get this far as FERC approval, which is not surprising. But luckily, we have the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality that has been really stern about not only the environmental impacts, but again, the lack of proven need for the project. So hopeful we are, stubborn we definitely are, and committed to the project, and preventing it will stand for as long as it takes.
I think it goes back to the whole analogy of we're not looking for Rome in a day. When my opinion really was formed on this was speaking with residents who owned property that was literally ripped away from them, and not in a this is for the better of the community, this is for the better of the country, we need to do this. It was literally, it's our right to take this, we're going to take it, you don't have a choice. And for me, sitting in this apartment recording this podcast, I don't know what it's like to be a landowner of many, many, many generations that have done things their way for so many years, and they have that right. And for me, I think it's true conservatism standing up for those landowners, and I find it interesting that when I mentioned the Rome in a day analogy, it's not like residents are going to these people that are in charge and saying, we want you to change this right now. They just want somebody with a voice to stand up with them. And that, even at this point, is something hard to do.
Yeah, eminent domain is a dangerous game to play, especially when the federal regulatory committee that's overseeing these projects is basically known as a rubber stamp machine. Not by just nonprofits, but groups, organizations, businesses, people all over the country. There's no true oversight and transparency in their decisions and why they're making those decisions. So there's so much information left in the dark that we can assume. But again, it's how could you plow through someone's land, take something from them, and all in the sake of this is the benefit of America, when it's not. From the materials used, the pipe itself, it's not even built in this country. The coating is, it leaches toxics into the ground when it's set in the sun, like they've been set for years, when the limit on their storage is up to 90 days. So it's baffling again, how you can do this in the name of patriotism and Americanism, when patriotism, and again, my opinion would be, living your life in such a way it doesn't harm anyone else, but supports them and lifts them up. There is no singular freedom. Freedom is having the right to be alive and do the things you need to do, but again, without impacting negatively the people around you. And I think that word is used too much, both of those, patriotism and freedom, when, what's more patriotic than being proud of where you live and having something that you've worked your entire life for, and then being able to enjoy it without the risk or the worry of falling ill because of contaminants or people taking your land to put pipelines on. It's sad, it's tough, and it's just not American, in my opinion, at all.
What's devastating too is these people are pretty much told your style of life is going to be punished just because we feel that this is a need and a necessity, when some studies would show that it's not a necessity, it's not a need. And the even sadder part to me, from people that I've talked to, and I know you've talked to way more than I have, this isn't the first time their family has gone through this.
Oh yeah, there's the Williams Transco pipeline that runs through, and some of the route of the MVP Southgate was planned originally to follow a good portion of that through Rockingham County. And again, this people that have property on that line that have already lost, this right of way to the existing pipeline, and had, dealt with it, adjusted, tried to navigate a new future for their plan and their outlook on their property. And there were folks that we talked to that, considering where the pipeline already in existence is on their property, they planned houses and safe places from it. And then, as it comes closer to their retirement or to that loan they've been waiting for to build these dreams, then here comes MVP Southgate saying, we're going to take that. You can't build there either. And, there's so many landowners and people that haven't met or met 100 times have just broken down and cried. And how could they not? Like, the fact that they made it that far into a conversation with me and not, showed some real emotion, like crying and weeping and just anger. I mean, they're stronger than I could be because, I mean, I only have a little bit of land. I don't have nearly as much as most of these folks do, but to have something come through the middle of it, it would just, it would wreck it. There's really no plan that I could have with a divided parcel into, everything we have is encompassing the entire property to make the best out of it. So it would be a game changer, to say the least. And I feel so deeply for a lot of these people, and I wish there was more that we could do. If there were a magic wand, it'd be a great thing to have in the toolkit right now, but obviously we don't. We just have each other, and we have the hope that we can make a change when we form these community ties and bring these people together and uplift their voices so they can speak for themselves. Shaky or not, you have to speak. You have to speak out and speak loud. And, we'll learn as time goes if we're doing the right thing. And I think that we are, and I hope that we are. And we'll see how it goes in the future, Joe. But, man, I'll tell you what, it's been a hard struggle.
He's Steven Pulliam, the Dan Riverkeeper. Find out more at danriverkeeper.org. Before we head out of here on the Dexter Report, Steven, I want to talk about leadership in these unprecedented times. It's definitely been a change for so many, and we were talking about, before hitting the record button, just how 2020 has really changed not only just how we approach leadership and community development and community involvement, but it's made us think a little bit more. I'm trying to look at the positive here of COVID. When I look at our situations here as community members, it can pull us apart if we choose it to. We can be relegated to our households, which we should be, but that doesn't mean in today's day and age we can't continue to develop community initiatives. And I want to find out from you, how are you doing that with the Dan Riverkeeper and Good Stewards?
We've had such a focus on environmental issues and in the sake of protection of those and the people around it. And, a lot of our initiatives involve crowdsourcing of just getting into the community, into festivals and talking and meeting these people and getting on the same page and getting to know the folks we don't, and to, build the bonds of the folks that we already know. And obviously all of that has been thrown out the window this year. We've canceled the majority of the things that we did have planned just because we don't want anyone to get sick. We don't want to be the cause of it. And if we can prevent it by canceling things, and obviously that's the right choice that we've made. But again, you can't sit idle. It's hard for most of the folks in Good Stewards to go a day without doing something. And so school closures started, and we're really concerned as parents. The majority of us are parents or grandparents. The thought of someone going hungry, and even more so on the thought of, in their minds that they're forgotten, it's just not acceptable. And it really shows that, how much community we've lost. And, a lot of folks like to compare some of the areas around here to the Andy Griffith era, to where folks communicate and talk, and we have company and cook for each other and bring neighbors gifts or baked goods, bring new neighbors whatever they need, just so people feel welcome. And a big thing that we've lost, in part from technology and phones and the rat race that we all live in some way or another, we've really let those bonds weaken and break. And if I think looking forward, if we could all get together and acknowledge each other for the strengths, for the weaknesses, and just try to help, not only give help but receive. I think it's harder for people to receive help than it is really to give it. I've never thought of myself as a community leader or somebody that would be working at a food bank or gathering food with my colleagues and my friends and my new friends, but it's what the year called for. It's, beckoned us to adapt and be more than what we've been, more than what we are. And, it's, when just kind of where I come from, we grew up poor. We didn't lack for a lot of things. We had each other, we had family, we had a small community. I go to church most weeks, twice a week. We always went to a Bible study, my brother and I. And so around Christmas time, they did these food drives. And so for weeks leading up to this, we'd scour through our cabinets, and we didn't have much. But, my dad, who was really sick at the time, and he was sick for most of my life up until he passed a few years ago. He would, get out of bed to help us look through the cabinet and try to find a can of food or a pack of crackers or something we could take to the church and donate to this bin. They were given to a family in need before Christmas. So, we gladly thought, we have everything we need. We didn't know as children that we were, considered poor or impoverished, but So we did what we could to find food from our house, from our grandparents, and take it. And so this last night of Bible camp, we bring in all of our stuff in these big boxes and bags of food. And so they announce at the end before we leave, who we're going to give it to. And they hand it to my brother and I, because, apparently they knew we were in much worse shape than what we realized. We never had to really consider it because, we were fortunate enough to have those ties, those bonds of family and friends and community. So, I felt really ashamed. I felt terrible about it. I just, I thought somebody else can use this. But as we go home with those bags, and my dad's a prideful man, a good man, but prideful nonetheless, and he breaks down and cries, and my mother. And so we're stocking our empty shelves with these cans and these food and things that people have donated just out of the kindness of their heart. I think that resonated for a long time with me of, we've brought ourselves, my family, my brothers, sisters, and I out of poverty through education and through just commitment. But that really never leaves you, that feeling of, holy crap, like we were really down there. And, but it didn't matter because we had friends and family and community. And, going through this year, that's one thing that I thought about so much. And, the death anniversary of my dad was not long ago, and it's something always brings up. I'm glad he instilled that, if you have something, you can give it. And if you need something, you should take it, proud or not. And so that's really the hope, no matter what we do going forward as Rock-Aid or as Good Stewards or just people that care about other people. I really hope that 2020 really brings together all of our religions, our races, and just seeing this bigger scope of things. What does any of this stuff matter if we don't have each other, if you don't have somebody to talk to, somebody to feed you and care for you when you're sick or when you're poor? The disparities are huge here, and the schools shut down. We've seen that even more. The folks that were having a struggle with reduced or free lunch at school, what mind can we realistically say they'll be all right? You can't, you don't know, but we do know that we can do our best to help each other and to continue doing things as long as it takes, whether it be fundraiser for Toys for Tots or for community organizations that are providing food to people in need. We can fill their hearts and minds and say, hey, you're not forgotten. We see you, we hear you, and we'll get through this together. And when we do, it's not enough to stop there. We need to build a better community. So the next time that something like this happens, and most likely it will in the future, we'll be ready. We won't have to struggle with food banks and finding food to donate. We won't have to build maps to show people where they can go to live, that we'll have this network in the future going forward, that when bad things happen, we know who we can call on, we know where to go. And that's our friends, our family, our community, our loved ones, and even the strangers that we're going to meet. I've met a lot of them this year, and they've all been taking meals for us, to families that need it, taking supplies, gift cards. You've seen it with your own eyes, Joe. Community, ordinary people are extraordinary when they apply themselves to do something in the name of good. And I don't think there is a better example that I know of right now of Rockingham County and the folks like you and Jenny Edwards and Louise Price. And I mean, there's so many people to name. I'm going to leave somebody out, so I guess I'll stop. But man, what else can we do? Let's figure it out. But we have to do it together. We have to, again, think outside of our box, and not only our box, but our bubble. Can folks get to a food bank? Do they have transportation? Do they have access to internet? Do they have the transportation to get to a hotspot so they can do homework or find a food bank? There's, again, so many disparities, and it goes community to community and house to house sometimes. But it's good that we're recognizing this stuff now and seeing it for what it is, and try to make amends for the lack of hindsight and foresight that we've had in the past. But recognize it now, yes, but let's break those barriers in the future so we don't have to worry so much as time passes. Let's do something impactful and meaningful and lasting. And the only way to do that is folks like you and I to meet and listen to each other's ideas and go from there. And I really am thankful for folks like you and all the folks that have supported myself and our organization and our families. We've got a long road ahead. There's a lot of people that might hear this or might be here today that aren't going to be here in February or March. And
right.
That's the hard reality we're facing right now. And do what you can for somebody else, even if it puts you back. That's freedom. That's patriotism. Help your brother, help your sister, help everybody you can, because in the end, that's all that's really going to matter.
For me, 2020, and I grew up similar to you did. I didn't ever need anything, but our family was probably at many times a paycheck away from needing everything. There is a stigma to this that I hope that as a country, as even here locally, we can just erase this. It's 2020. Everybody, I don't care what you have, has a need, has a situation in their life, has a difference in their life that sets them away from what is quote unquote the norm. But I hope that we realize in this time, as we go in this unprecedented time in our lives, just how important it is to erase those things, because at the end of the day, they just don't matter. And if we can take that approach to whether it's somebody who needs help with food, you mentioned Toys for Tots, whether it's even just, somebody needing a pencil, man. It's not important. This isn't 1952 anymore.
That's right. It's if you don't live for other people, I suggest trying it, because it used to be the thing that helped me sleep at night, knowing that I did something. And these days, it's the things that keep me awake at night, wondering what we can do more. And it's a hard world. It's a hard reality we live in. But if life is short, if you love something, you love someone, tell them now. So we're not promised tomorrow, and 2020 has really come to show that. We've lost a lot of good people, and we're going to lose more. So pretend today is it. If you can do one thing today for somebody else, for something else, big or small, just do it. And, if you live to see tomorrow, good, do it again. Keep in that mindset. And, do this for the people that aren't with us, and do it for the people that we're going to try to keep here.
I'll end on this, Stephen, as we look forward to the rest of 2020 and into 2021. One thing I find that's important, and you've touched on this a little bit, is we have the Zoom calls, right? We look at a computer screen, and sometimes I think, we got to do the Zoom again. We look at some of those situations, but we can simplify things by being thankful, just basically that we have an ability to still communicate through technology. So I think it's important during these times to look deep within, to find simplicity in life, to better live and better give and better be as a husband, as a community leader, as a business owner. It doesn't matter. If you take the situation for what it is with quote unquote a grain of salt, it's going to not only be better for you, but it's going to help us move towards a time where this isn't in our lives, but we're better because of it.
Exactly. And I think Winston Churchill said that Americans, you can rest assured they'll always do the right thing, but after they've tried everything else first. And it's hilarious, but it's not true. I hate that saying, because, you have the ability of anything that you want to do. The world is at your fingertips. Just do something. And we're a prideful and stubborn bunch, but we're resilient, and we can do this, but we have to do it together. That's my hope. Continue building, continue loving, continue appreciating, and just be grateful for what we have, because you don't know what tomorrow brings, and let's be thankful for what we've got.
He's Steven Pulliam, Good Stewards of Rockingham County, the Dan Riverkeeper. You can find out more at danriverkeeper.org. And I'd be remiss to say, I still believe, I know our friend Jamie Vaughn might think it, but you have the best beard in Rockingham County. Period.
I've been trimming mine. I'm sure Jamie's is much longer than mine now.
He had Christmas ornaments in his today on Facebook. So maybe I take back what I said.
Jamie's the man. He can have it, but he's got me beat. For the sake of appearances, I've been actually trimming and shaving and cutting my hair now, so I don't look like a woodsman when I walk into a courthouse or a meeting. So, Jamie, you're the man.
He's Steven Pulliam. Steven, thanks for joining us on the inaugural episode of the Dexter Report. Take care. Be safe out there.
My pleasure, Joe. And if anybody's listening and wants to go paddle for a good cause, the MMRT hosted by Joe Berry of the Carolina Canoe Club. We're starting off January 16th, 10 a.m. at Stoneville Park. You see the boats and all the cars, you're in the right place, as Joe says. So come out, raise money, bring food, bring canned food, all you can get, all you can buy, all you find in your house. Go to your neighbor's house and get canned food and bring it out, because it's going to support our communities and help us reach a healthier future. So again, Joe, thank you so much. Thanks for what you're doing, and it was good to talk to you, man. I'm glad you're here.
He's the Dan Riverkeeper, Steven Pulliam. You can find out more about how he's impacting our local community by visiting danriverkeeper.org. So glad that Steven was the first guest on the Dexter Report, because he sets the tone and the pace for what I want this show to be. Grounded in community, because that's Steven in a nutshell. Every time you see him, he's out there making a difference by helping someone else. I love that about him. It's so infectious. It makes you want to be better. It makes you want to help others when needed, just because it's the right thing to do, not because there's some message behind it, not because there's some belief behind it. That defines Steven Pulliam to me to a T, and I hope that the Dexter Report will continue that pace and that voice for other community leaders here in our community and across the country. Thanks for listening to the first edition of the Dexter Report. Let me help you tell your story. All you have to do to find out more is visit facebook.com/Dexter Media Solutions. Have a great week, everybody. We'll be back next week with the Dexter Report.